In Oregon, the forests don't just grow. They remember, from the tangled moss of the Coast Range to the black pine silence of the Cascades. This state's wilderness holds stories older than state lines and darker than the deepest canyon. They speak of creatures that walk like men, but aren't, of lights that burn with no fire, of whispers in the fog that never seem to come from any mouth. The trees themselves seem to lean in closer when these tales are told, as if they too want to listen. For centuries, travelers, settlers, and native peoples have crossed these lands, and each has left behind fragments of fear, wonder, and warning. What began as distant campfire tales have grown into legends passed from one generation to the next, twisted and fed by time like vines wrapping around an old stump. But buried beneath the exaggeration, there is always a sliver of something real. A footprint too large, a scream too strange, a place too quiet. Today we bring 12 of these dark Oregon legends back to life. And as we move deeper into the woods, we'll uncover the truths and terrors that refuse to be forgotten. But be warned, the last story might explain why some places in Oregon are still missing from the maps, and why some who go in never come back out. Legend 1. The Bandaged Man of Cannon Beach. They say if you park on a foggy night along the winding stretch of Highway 101 near Cannon Beach, you might hear something thump onto your car roof, something heavy breathing, and very much alive. The story of the Bandaged Man began in the 1950s. Though locals whisper it stretches even further back, it's said he was once a logger, a man horrifically mangled in a sawmill accident, his body wrapped hastily in blood-soaked gauze. He died en route to the hospital, or so they thought. His corpse vanished before reaching the morgue. Days later, strange sightings began. A figure wrapped head to toe in tattered bandages, limping along the roadside or appearing suddenly in truck beds and the back seats of parked cars. Teenagers parking along the cliffs to watch the tide roll in were often the first to report him. One couple claimed the radio cut to static, the windows fogged with breath, and then 3 sharp knocks from the roof. The boy got out to check. He found nothing. But when he turned back, the girl was screaming. She saw a figure lurch past the rear window, leaving bloody smears behind. Truckers have described a stench like rotting flesh just before their engines sputter near a specific bend in the road. One man said his cab door flew open while driving at full speed, only to be yanked shut again by invisible hands. A mechanic found bandages stuck under the chassis. Skeptics call it local lore, chalking it up to small-town gossip or thrill-seeking teen. But locals believe it's something far older. Some connect the Bandaged Man to ancient stories of spirits trapped between worlds, doomed to walk the edge of life and death. Others think he's the embodiment of suffering that never found peace, a man too mangled to be buried, too angry to be forgotten. In Cannon Beach today, the tale lives on. Some shops sell Bandaged Man burgers as a novelty. But just beyond the laughter, there are still warning signs posted on quiet overlooks. Don't park here after dark, because the Bandaged Man doesn't knock to be let in, he's already waiting. Legend 2. The Vanishing Hitchhiker of Highway 20. They say she appears just after midnight, standing barefoot along the shoulder of Highway 20, where the forest grows thick and the road seems to exhale mist from the trees. She wears a long white dress, soaked to the hem, her dark hair hanging like wet vines over her face. She never speaks, just raises one hand slowly, and waits. This stretch of road between Sweet Home and Sisters has long been feared for more than just its curves. According to local lore, the ghostly woman is the spirit of a young bride who died in a car crash on her wedding night in the 1940s. Her husband had taken a shortcut through the mountain roads, and their car veered off during a storm, plunging into the Santiam River. Only his body was ever found. Hers was lost to the current. Weeks later, drivers began reporting strange encounters. A woman in white, wandering the roadside alone. One man picked her up, swearing she felt ice cold in the back seat. She gave him a name, an address in Bend, but when he arrived, she was gone. A bewildered homeowner answered the door and said the girl had died decades ago. Over the years, truckers, tourists, and even state troopers have all shared chillingly similar stories. She appears without warning, sometimes inside the vehicle staring out the window with a look of aching sadness. One family claimed their GPS glitched repeatedly, rerouting them back to the same lonely stretch of road. On the third pass, their youngest daughter whispered, "She's following us." Skeptics suggest sleep deprivation, weather illusions, or tricks of fog and fear. But even they admit how often reports emerge from rational, sober witnesses, people with no reason to lie. Old-timers say she's not malevolent, just lost, still searching for her groom, still trying to finish her journey home. Locals leave flowers by the highway on rainy nights. Others keep their eyes forward and their radios loud, unwilling to glance in the rearview mirror, because if you do you might see her there, watching, waiting for someone to finally take her home. Legend 3. The Ghosts of Heceta Head Lighthouse. Perched high above the Pacific on a jagged bluff near Florence, the Heceta Head Lighthouse cuts through the ocean mist with its eye of eternal fire. It's one of the most photographed spots on the Oregon coast, but those who linger after sundown often find the light reveals more than waves. The haunting here began in the late 1890s, when the first lighthouse keeper moved in with his family. Not long after, tragedy struck. A young daughter, some say her name was Rue, fell from the cliffs while playing near the edge. Her mother was never the same. She stayed in the keeper's house long after her husband died, rarely speaking, wandering the halls with a lantern, searching the rocks below. Eventually, she passed away in one of the upstairs rooms, but something remained. For over a century, guests and workers at the lighthouse have reported eerie phenomena. Footsteps echo in the empty halls, and doors creak open without wind. Mirrors shatter in locked rooms. One keeper awoke to find every cabinet in the kitchen thrown open without a sound. Another said he saw the faint outline of a woman in Victorian dress walking along the balcony, staring out to sea. Perhaps the most famous tale comes from a construction crew renovating the assistant keeper's quarters in the 1970s. Tools disappeared, and one man refused to return after seeing a pale figure hovering at the top of the stairs. That night, the crew left a note apologizing for disturbing the house. The next morning, their missing tools were neatly arranged at the doorstep. Skeptics attribute the activity to the creaks and groans of old wood and sea wind, but those who've stayed overnight often leave changed, rattled, silent, or wide-eyed in the morning light. Local legend calls the spirit the Gray Lady, believed to be the grieving mother still watching for her lost child, her soul bound to the cliffs by sorrow and salt air. Today, the lighthouse remains operational. Tourists walk the trails and take photos of the view, but the brave or the unlucky may find themselves hearing soft weeping through the fog. And if you see a flicker in the window that isn't the beam, don't assume you're alone. Legend 4. The Cursed Cryptids of the Tillamook Forest. Deep in the moss-drenched shadows of the Tillamook Forest, where rain falls like a whispered warning and the canopy swallows the light, locals whisper of strange beasts that don't belong in the world we know. They call them the Tillamook Cryptids, shifting creatures that change shape in the blink of an eye, vanishing before the brain can catch up with the eyes. The earliest stories came from the Tillamook and Clatsop tribes, long before the first logging roads were carved into the hills. They spoke of shadowkin forest spirits that could mimic animals or even humans, sent to protect sacred groves. But something changed when settlers arrived. Trees fell, rivers rerouted, and the forest grew angry. In 1933, after the infamous Tillamook burn scorched hundreds of thousands of acres, firefighters reported being stalked by strange figures in the smoke. One man described a creature with the body of a bear, but the face of a man. Another swore he saw something crouched among the ashes with eyes like molten gold, watching, unblinking, unafraid. Since then, hikers and hunters have come back with terrifying tales. Hooved prints that end suddenly in the middle of a clearing, whispers that echo without a source, and figures just beyond the tree line that shift from deer to dog to something else. A biologist once placed motion-sensitive cameras throughout the forest. Several were found smashed, clawed, and turned toward the trees, as if something didn't want to be seen. Skeptics point to misidentified wildlife, optical illusions, and the mind's tendency to play tricks when surrounded by shadows. But loggers working near the Wilson River claim entire work crews have quit overnight after hearing something big circling their camps, something walking upright but not human. Today, some parts of the forest are still avoided after dark. Hunters carry extra ammunition not for bears but for something they won't describe. And among old-timers there's a rule: if you hear your own voice calling from the woods, don't answer, because it isn't you, and it doesn't want to be found. Legend 5. The Witch of Mulher Cave. Far from the ocean's mist, and deeper into Oregon's high desert, lies a cavern few speak of aloud, Mulher Cave. Hidden among the sagebrush hills east of Burns, it's a lava tube nearly a quarter-mile long, black as pitch and cold as bone. And according to those who know its story, it's the resting place of a witch who never truly died. The legend traces back to the mid-1800s, when settlers began disappearing near the foothills. Cattle were found drained of blood, their hides left untouched. A group of prospectors swore they saw a pale woman crouched at the cave's mouth, chanting in a language none could name. They said her eyes glowed like coals, and when they approached, the earth seemed to shake. Only 2 of them made it back to town, both mad, raving about the woman in the dark. Later, Ranchers claimed their horses refused to ride past the cave. One local boy who dared to explore it was found days later, wandering barefoot in the snow, his tongue gone and his hands scorched. He never spoke again. Some believe the cave is a natural vortex, a spiritual doorway. Occult groups have held rituals there under the cover of night, and rumors swirl of an ancient coven that once used the cave for sacrifice. In the 1930s, a traveling mystic reportedly vanished during a seance inside. The only thing left behind was his journal, pages stained with blood and filled with frantic drawings of a hooded figure with antlers. Skeptics dismiss it all as desert fever and isolation-induced panic, but no one can explain the magnetic anomalies or why digital equipment dies near the entrance. Wildlife won't go near it, and in the summer of 1971, a group of geology students from Portland State disappeared during an expedition. Their campsite was found intact, their lanterns still lit, but not one footprint leaving the cave. Today the land around Mulher Cave is privately owned, but warnings remain. Signs are torn down, only to reappear days later. The entrance is cold, even in midsummer, and wind never enters. But something else might come out. If you feel a hand on your shoulder in that endless dark, don't turn around. It might be hers. Legend 6. The Shrieking Forest of Dead Man's Hollow. Just outside the town of Oak Ridge, where the Cascades rise like ancient guardians and the trees grow too close for comfort, there lies a forgotten gulch known as Dead Man's Hollow. The name alone keeps most folks away, but it's the sound that seals its infamy. A piercing, unnatural shriek that echoes through the pines like something being torn from the world. The story dates back to the late 1800s, when a group of loggers vanished in the hollow during a spring thaw. Their bodies were never found, only shredded tents, shattered tools, and blood soaked deep into the soil. Survivors of nearby camps spoke of hearing screaming that didn't stop for hours. No animals, no footsteps, just one long rising wail that made grown men abandon their gear and flee barefoot through the brush. Local tribes had already avoided the place for generations. According to their stories, a great wrong had been committed there, land taken in blood, and a spirit awakened in the roots. They called it She Who Screams Beneath. A presence bound to the earth itself, punishing anyone who desecrated it. In the decades that followed, reports mounted, hikers went missing. Campers returned mute with fear. Some told of phantom voices in the canopy, children crying, a woman begging, a man laughing just behind them. In 1956, a surveyor from Eugene was found at the hollow's edge, his ears bleeding, his compass spinning wildly in place. The only thing he could say before collapsing was, "It was under me." Geologists claim the sounds come from shifting rock layers or underground springs, but recordings made inside the hollow capture a bone-chilling shriek, layered with whispers in forgotten tongues. No wildlife lives there, no insects buzz. The forest itself seems to hold its breath. To this day, locals say the scream returns every spring, always at dusk, always from nowhere. And those who hear it, they say it's not just a sound, it's something calling, something that wants you to answer. Legend 7. The Phantom Train of the Santiam Pass. In the high reaches of Oregon's Cascades, where snow covers the tracks half the year, and pine trees lean like solemn witnesses, the old Santiam rail line once carried timber, soldiers, and secrets. Most of the tracks have vanished now, consumed by forest and rust, but locals claim one train still runs, though no whistle ever sounds, and no conductor rides the rails. They call it the Phantom Train of Santiam Pass. The legend begins in the winter of 1923, when an avalanche struck a passenger train attempting to cross the mountains during a storm. Dozens were buried alive in the snow. Rescue crews reached them too late. The locomotive was never recovered. Only fragments of wood and one scorched lantern still warm to the touch. In the years that followed, people reported hearing a distant engine rumble where no tracks remained, a low metallic groan cutting through the mountain silence. Campers told of ghostly lights weaving through the fog, and of the smell of coal smoke drifting across empty ridges. One hiker, caught in a blizzard, claimed he flagged down a headlight and climbed aboard what he thought was a snowplow. He awoke alone, miles from the trail, surrounded by untouched snow, and no sign of a path. Railway workers refused to maintain the old trestle at mile marker 89. Tools vanished. One man vanished. Those who stayed behind reported a shriek of brakes and screams on windless nights. Geologists dismissed it as ice cracking or rock fall, but couldn't explain why audio equipment fried near the collapsed tunnel entrance. Today that stretch of mountain is considered cursed. GPS fails. Hikers lose time. Some leave offerings, pennies, watches, even old conductor caps, along the crumbled stone to appease whatever spirit might still be running its eternal route. Local folklore says, if you hear the whistle you've already missed it, if you see the light you're too late, but if you feel the ground rumble under your boots in the still of night, you might want to step off the trail, because the train is coming, and it never stops. Legend Sign 8. The Skinwalker of the Umatilla Forest. On the eastern side of Oregon, where the Blue Mountains stretch into shadow and the Umatilla Forest whispers with ancient breath, there exists a fear older than the trees themselves. A fear without a face, because it can wear yours, the Umatilla Skinwalker. This legend runs deepest among the tribal elders, passed down with firelight and caution. It speaks of a once powerful shaman, who used sacred rites for selfish gain, turning spirit magic into a weapon. As punishment he was cursed, forever bound to walk the forest in stolen forms. Neither man nor beast. His true self rotted away. Those who've seen it say it doesn't stay in one shape for long. One moment, it's a coyote limping through the fog. The next, a tall figure with hollow eyes that flicker with intelligence too human to be animal, too unnatural to be alive. It mimics voices, especially those of loved ones. It cries like a child. It knocks without hands. Campers in the forest have reported hearing their own names whispered from the trees. One hunter followed the sound of his brother calling out only to find his brother asleep back at camp. Another family found their firewood neatly stacked in the morning, though no one remembers doing it, and strange claw marks were etched into the bark nearby. Skeptics blame paranoia, misidentified wildlife, or tricks of the wind. But too many have returned from Umatilla changed, quiet, wide-eyed, unwilling to speak of what followed them through the pines. Rangers refuse to patrol certain areas after dark. Some say a government study once tried to track a creature with infrared cameras. The footage went dark. The team never returned. To this day, tribal elders warn, never answer a voice calling from the woods, never travel alone, and never ever speak your name out loud where the trees can hear. Because once the Skinwalker knows your name, it knows your shape, and if it takes your place, no one will know the difference. Legend 9. The Crater Lake Curse. At the heart of Oregon, where the earth once exploded in rage, and left behind a blue so deep it seems bottomless, lies Crater Lake, a place of breathtaking beauty and unspeakable dread. Tourists come for the view. Locals stay away after dark, because the lake is cursed. Long before it was Crater Lake, the Klamath people told of a battle between gods. Loe, the spirit of the underworld, rose from Mount Mazama to court a tribal chief's daughter. She refused, and Loeo unleashed fire and fury. Scale, the sky god, intervened, casting down Loeo and collapsing the mountain into itself. The lake filled the void, but it did not bury the darkness. To this day, park rangers and hikers report strange occurrences. Lights flicker across the water with no source. Figures are seen walking across the lake's surface on moonless nights. The most chilling tale is that of the Watcher, a cloaked silhouette seen standing motionless on Wizard Island, never moving, never blinking. When boats approach, it vanishes without a ripple. There have been dozens of drownings in Crater Lake, most without explanation. Experienced swimmers vanish in calm conditions. Bodies are rarely recovered. One diver attempting to explore the lake's deep caverns surfaced screaming about a mouth in the stone that breathed. In 1947, a small plane crashed into the lake. No wreckage was ever found. Decades later, sonar equipment picked up an object moving beneath the surface, fast, massive, and silent. The signal disappeared before it could be identified. Some believe Loeo still lives below, feeding on those who venture too close to his domain. Others think the lake is a spiritual gate, a place where the veil between worlds is thinnest. Skeptics cite optical illusions and the lake's strange depth, but the stories persist. Today, Crater Lake remains sacred ground to the Klamath and a destination for the curious. But those who know its history leave offerings at the rim or avoid its gaze altogether, because when you stare into Crater Lake too long, something might stare back. Legend 10. The Howler of the Devil's Staircase. In the darkest reaches of Oregon's Coast Range lies a twisted labyrinth of ridges and ravines, so dense, so untouched, that even maps struggle to chart its full breadth. They call it the Devil's Staircase Wilderness, a name earned not by devil worship, but by the merciless, bone-breaking terrain that descends like steps into a realm of silence and shadow. But it's not the land that keeps people away, it's the sound. They call it the howler. The legend began with homesteaders in the late 1800s. Deep in the forest, men clearing timber began hearing what they described as a woman wailing with the lungs of a bear. The cry didn't echo like any known creature. It grew closer, then circled them, without footsteps. Then the animals started vanishing. One man's dogs were found crushed, bones twisted in unnatural angles, their eyes wide with terror. Survivors spoke of a figure seen at dusk, tall, gaunt, with limbs too long and a gait like it had forgotten how to walk. It never attacked directly. It watched, it followed. And then it screamed. A scream that made blood run cold and caused men to abandon their tools and run blind through thorns and rock. In the 1960s, a group of hikers vanished near Wasson Creek. Their camp was discovered days later, tents slashed, gear scattered, no blood, no tracks. Only a notebook was found, with a final entry scrawled in red. It's not an animal. Skeptics blame cougars or the wind twisting through canyons, but wildlife biologists who've studied the area report patterns of missing fauna and have recorded howls that match no known species. One researcher quit after hearing it up close. He said it felt like the forest itself had lungs. Today, few dare to enter Devil's Staircase alone. The wilderness is officially protected now, but not for preservation, for containment. Locals say, if you hear the howler behind you, run. If you hear it in front of you, pray. And if it goes silent, it's already found you. Legend 11. The Whispering Pines of Silver Falls. Tucked in the lush canyons east of Salem, where waterfalls tumble like veils over moss-covered cliffs, Silver Falls State Park is a haven for hikers and photographers alike. But behind the postcard beauty lies something older and far more unsettling. The locals call it the Whispering Pines. Long before it became a state park, this land was sacred to native Kalapuya tribes. They believed the trees spoke, not in metaphor, but in actual voices. According to their stories, the pines were guardians of ancient spirits, watchers rooted to protect a hidden portal between worlds. But when settlers came, trees were felled, trails cut, and something once silent began to stir. The whispers began subtly. Campers claimed to hear their names spoken softly from the dark. Not shouted, never screamed, just a voice behind the ear, like someone standing too close. One couple said they followed what they thought was their child's laughter into the woods, only to find their son still asleep in the tent. Park rangers have logged reports of visitors going missing for hours, only to reappear in the same spot they vanished from, dazed, claiming they'd only been gone a minute. A biologist once camped alone to study bird migration. He was found at sunrise sitting cross-legged in the middle of the trail, eyes wide, repeating one word: listen. Audio devices often malfunction within certain groves, GPS spins, phones die, and always the trees seem to lean just a little differently when you return, like they've moved ever so slightly while you weren't looking. Skeptics blame echoing water, trick acoustics, or wind, but those who've heard the voices insist they were real. Some say the pines remember every step you take, every word you speak, and repeat them back in your weakest moments. Today the falls still flow and the trails remain open, but if you hike too far off the path and hear the trees begin to murmur your name, do not answer, because whatever speaks from the pines doesn't want to talk, it wants you to follow. Legend 12. The Lost Town Beneath Detroit Lake. Beneath the placid surface of Detroit Lake, where families picnic and boats drift lazily in the summer sun, lies a forgotten town swallowed not just by water but by silence. Its name was Old Detroit, and some say it never left. Founded in the late 1800s as a logging outpost, Detroit once bustled with sawmills and saloons, a small but vibrant frontier community nestled in the Santiam Canyon. But in the 1950s, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers built a dam to control flooding. The town was evacuated, its buildings dismantled or burned. What couldn't be moved was left behind: foundations, wells, and cemeteries now submerged in the man-made reservoir. But ever since the floodwaters rose, strange things have been reported on the lake. Boaters speak of hearing church bells beneath the water, bells that should no longer exist. Fishermen have felt sudden drops in temperature, their lines tugged by something heavy, something that never surfaced. One diver exploring the shallows during a dry year swore he saw headstones just beneath the silt. The names worn away, but the silence deafening. When he returned to the spot days later, they were gone. Local teenagers tell stories of a ghost town that returns when the water recedes. Cracked roads and crumbling stairs emerge like bones from the deep. A child's bicycle was once found rusted and upright in the muck. No one knows how it got there. One man claimed he saw a row of submerged windows reflecting light when there was no sun. Some believe the town's final residents never left, their lives interrupted, their routines drowned but not forgotten. Others say the lake itself is cursed, too still, too quiet, as if listening. The water levels fall each summer, revealing more of what lies beneath. But when the fog rolls in and the surface flattens like glass, you might catch a glimpse of a street where no street should be, or hear footsteps echo where no ground remains. Detroit wasn't destroyed, it was buried alive, and sometimes the past doesn't stay